Thank you so much, all. Hi, guys. Nice to be here. My name is Tatiana Bruyevich, and I am Senior Engineering Manager of the LinkedIn Global Readiness team. Next slide, please. So LinkedIn is the world's largest professional network with more than 700 million users in more than 200 countries and territories worldwide. So we all live in multilingual world, and LinkedIn is not exception. The top of 100 languages in the world represent a population of 5.6 billion native speakers, and 75% of LinkedIn members are located outside of the United States and use LinkedIn in their preferred languages. Next slide, please. So who we are? LinkedIn Global Readiness team is a team who has a mission to connect world professionals to make them more productive and successful. And it's not just words. Next slide, please. Because we have a vision to reduce language barriers from LinkedIn's ecosystem in order to create economic opportunities for every member of the global workforce. Next slide, please. So LinkedIn Global Readiness team has two key priorities area. One of them is localization ecosystem. What we are doing here, actually we are building a modern ITN and LTN infrastructure for different types of content, terminology and style guide management, transcreation, translation, and localization that enables a truly continuous localization cycle. Targeted go-to-market language strategies with output options ranging from immediate machine translation option to high-quality translation transcreation without technical limitations. The second area is language technologies. Here we focus on providing computational linguistic technologies for automatic language detection, content identification, machine translation for LinkedIn content, training data to build machine learning models for areas like content categorization, spam detection, standardization, taxonomy, trust and safety, etc. And this allows us significantly enhance our multilingual experience through deeper integration of language cognitive services into all LinkedIn products. Enough about LinkedIn Global Readiness team, we will talk about it later, but now it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Ivan Kirillov, the guy who is LinkedIn veteran, localization expert, and engineering manager of the LinkedIn Global Readiness team, who is going to talk to us about centralized localization tool. Ivan, yours.
Hello, my name is Ivan. I am a manager at the LinkedIn Global Readiness team, and today I will talk about the LinkedIn Centralized Localization tool. I will cover the tool's core features and functionalities like segmentation, recycling database, machine translation, and filtering that build it up as a centerpiece service, and its interaction with the other building blocks that are part of the localization ecosystem. I will start with some comparisons between the current localization ecosystem and the new one that the tool is part of. Then I will spend some time describing the two core services that build it up: software optimization and recycling management. Next, I will present our software and non-software translation flows and share details about machine and human translation types, followed by a user story told from a product manager point of view. LinkedIn has a well-mature localization pipeline, which has been set up over a decade ago. Through these years, it has successfully served the company. Only until recently, though. A while ago, due to the sheer number of translation requests, that has exponentially grown through the years, and the lower level of automation that presented a difficulty to really integrate well with the company's current product release cadences that are frequent and based on automation. Some other disadvantages that we are aware of are the lack of centralized interface that burdens each client to implement its own logic in order to connect directly to the underlying translation management system, third-party dependency, and limited ability to implement enhanced customization. Our current translation management system is a third-party tool that only allows LinkedIn to use a client-exposed SDK with limited customization capabilities and insufficient flexibility and adaptiveness. A lot of manual interaction to create and maintain language-based workflows, which is error-prone and complicated. As the team evaluated the status quo, it quickly became clear that we needed a new ecosystem in which we should use some of the existing services. We all agree that we also needed to create a new centralized service that should meet the following criteria. It should be created internally to avoid vendor dependency. The service should provide for a special library for unabridged customization. It should be built around event-driven architecture with advanced automation in mind. It should be flexible enough to support future linguistic expansions. Enter the centralized localization tool. We have set several main goals for it. The first one is the efficient localization process. While leaving some services from our current ecosystem in the new one, the tool had to integrate with them and eliminate the problems with the old pipeline mentioned above to optimize design and easier connection with third-party translation management systems. CMS and TMS agnostic. We have several content management systems that send requests for translations. CLT provides a single API entry point for all client requests to which it connects to and understands multiple upstream content management systems. In the backend, CLT uses a connector, which is another brand new feature added to the system, that takes the request, converts it to industry standard format XLFF, and sends it to the underlying translation management system. If we're using translation management system A today and need to switch to translation management system B tomorrow, this will be done through minimal code changes inside the connector. None of the request sending clients will be affected. Enable scale and speed. The tool should be capable to accommodate current translation request workloads for both software and non-software strings and return them within the agreed SLA without blocking our product release cycle. Enable asset optimization and internal recycling coupled with machine translation. Asset optimization and recycling management are the two core services that build up the tool. More about each one of these in the following slides. There is an increased demand for machine translation, so the tool offers a corresponding flow that sends to a Microsoft Text Translator API and returns it within seconds. So the last goal is enable unassisted scenarios that require zero human interaction. And it's yet another goal that adds up to the efficiency and speed and greatly reduces the chance of human errors. Here is a bird's eye view of the ecosystem with schematic connections between the main services. On the top, we have various clients like software products and content management systems that initiate translation requests, which in turn are passed on to the CLT through the relevant API interfaces. CLT performs optimization or recycling based on type of the request, sends it for machine translation if required, or through the connector to the translation management system where a project is created, worked upon, and when completed and returned back, the client gets notified about that. CLT consists of two core services that handle dedicated pipeline for software and non-software strings. Software strings go through the so-called software optimization, and non-software strings use the recycling management. Each of these pipelines will be described in the coming slides. The pipeline for software string translation starts with the clients-like products that initiate translation requests. By translation requests, we mean commits that change the software strings in the relevant files. After a call to an internal library to identify linguistic content, translation requests are immediately extracted by translation server. The name of the service is a bit of a misnomer as no actual translation is done here. And then they are sent to the CLT or its software optimization service. This is where they undergo software optimization. Software optimization service then calls the other part of CLT, the recycling management, that takes care of the rest of the pipeline for both machine and human translation. These flows will be described in the coming slides. We define the process of preventing previously translated software strings from reaching the TMS as software optimization. The first phase here is filtering or the removal of already translated software strings found in the string database from the assets that are sent for translation. In certain cases, we don't have to send anything to the translation management system as we leverage 100% from the entities found in the strings database. So the autocomplete feature kicks in and the target assets are sent back immediately. The third stage, restoration, occurs when translations are done and the translated software strings are retrieved from the translation management system. Translated payload is restored and sent back to the translation server. Translation pipeline for non-software strings starts with requests that the clients, such as content management systems, generate. Our first step or business logic block after the non-software strings hit the recycling management is the segmentation, where they are broken up into meaningful segments by defined breakaway criteria. The segments are then recycled through the database. Based on specific matching criteria that are beyond the scope of this presentation, the recycling management provides corresponding translation candidates. If machine translation is requested, the strings are sent to a chain of mid-tier and backend services to Microsoft Text Translator API, where the actual translation is made and returned back to the recycling management service, which in turn brings it back to the client. Status and search and track and report are business logic blocks that add string status and search capabilities for already done translations, as well as check the request and produce static report metrics based on the information that we get. In case a human translation is needed, the request is forwarded to a connector, which is an independent library that the CLT depends on. That's where it's converted to industry standard file format for localization exchange, XLFF, regardless of the input format that the clients use to send to CLT. We end up with this standard and unified approach that we stick to when interacting with the translation management system. Hence, we don't need to worry about adding customization support on the translation management system itself, as it has already been taken care of inside the connector. XLFF also supports LinkedIn special string formatting, which made it the obvious choice during the design phase. Finally, the request reaches vendor-provided translation management system, where a new product is created, translations are made, and once done, returned back to LinkedIn. Let me provide more details on the two separate flows that I mentioned, machine and human translation. The empty flow is a synchronous call that brings back machine translations, which can be delivered to the client within seconds. As already mentioned, segmentation is the first business logic block, which, along with recycling, happens inside the recycling management system, regardless of the translation type, machine or human. The content is sent by the clients, is split into segments following a strict segmentation logic. The segments are then recycled, so in case they exist in the recycling database, they can be reused without the need for duplicate outside calls to the Microsoft Text Translator API. This is time and cost efficient and reduces system overhead. Segments that do not meet the matching criteria and need to be sent for machine translation are first handled by the empty customization layer through a chain of customizers where each one applies a specific customization rule. Customizers are linked in a predefined sequence where the output of the last one is sent further to the next block, the machine translation request and response. The requesting part of this block will process and prepare a unified request type that will be sent to our mid-tier services, which in turn convert to Microsoft compatible request and forward it out of the LinkedIn network. Details of the mid-tier service layer are outside the scope of this presentation, so it should suffice to say that once the translation is done, it's brought back to CLT, where the response is decoupled by the empty response part and sent back to the empty customization, which will restore the string to the original segment. Translated segments will then be restored back to their original format and sent back to clients. The human translation flow starts with segmentation and recycling, where all segments that meet the threshold criteria are populated with translations from the recycling database. Segments that fall below the recycling threshold are sent for machine translation and pre-populated before the next stage. They follow the path of the empty flow explained earlier. The content is then converted to XLFF format inside a converter and forwarded through a special gateway to the external data domain, the translation management system, where a project is created. As this is an asynchronous call, our clients receive HTTP response code 202 accepted so that they know what the request has been processed and sent for translation. The actual translation is worked upon by LSPs inside the translation management system as part of translation project. When it's ready, the connector uses a webhook to retrieve it back. The connector reconverts extracted translated segments from the retrieved XLFF and updates the recycling database if necessary. Finally, the segments are reconstructed back to original content and returned back to clients. A user story. A product manager at LinkedIn redesigns the profile section for skills with some new options. The new strings are coded by a developer and committed to our code repository into an asset containing both old and new strings, where they are picked up by our automated localization pipeline and sent through for translation. Our centralized localization tool will pick up the updated asset, segment the lines so that each string is identified as an individual text unit. We look up each text unit in our existing translation database, and any previously translated strings are immediately returned with autocomplete as a partial asset. Any new strings are populated with a suggested translation, either a very good fuzzy match or custom entity, before being packaged into an XLFF file and sent to an external translation management system for post-editing by either our internal localization producers or third-party vendor. Upon return, we unpack the XLFF, save the new and now approved translations into the DB. Then the translators are returned to the code repository for publishing. Any names, numbers, dates, etc. are added as placeholders and will be displayed in the format defined for each target language. As members across the world begin updating their profiles, they add new skills in a variety of languages. In order to identify and properly categorize these skills, our standardization team compares the member input to our skills taxonomy containing both English and translated skills. If no match is found, the new skill can be sent for machine translation in order to produce an English term candidate. And both the English and the original source term can be considered candidates for our internal team to add into the skills taxonomy, thus both identifying the new term and expanding our taxonomy. That was the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. So we should be opening the mic now, so feel free to ask questions, guys.
Okay, we can also do this by chat, if including while the speaker is going. You could put a question into the chat, and I think we have one already from Rebecca Ray, who typed in, does LinkedIn still use an in-house TMS, or do they depend completely on LSPs for that?
Okay, so we are still dependent on a third-party vendor-provided TMS.
Vendor provided, okay. We'll see if Rebecca has a follow-up. Texan asks, QA process, question mark. That's an open-ended question.
QA process there, thanks for that question. QA process is, now integral part at LinkedIn of our development. Simply because now the developers are responsible not only for creating their code, but also creating the test and test that code through various types of tests. So all the services that we create go through a very robust unit integration, load, and performance testing phase.
Okay. And then Helen Jung asks, do the two pipelines, software versus non-software, differ in SLA when they go out to vendors?
I can take this one. It's the yeah. So actually, thank you so much for this question, Helen. But SLA for translation is responsibility of our partners team, localization and global experience. I can say only from high level, yes, it's different SLA, but more information, unfortunately, I will not able to provide. Yes, it's different.
Okay. And then Marina asks, can you elaborate on the recycling step? What exactly happens there?
So the recycling, think of a recycling is a database. So a database where we store segmented content. So we are kind of matching. So every request that we intake from request generating clients, like content management system, we are kind of comparing this one to the, for any instances or occurrence inside the database, the recycling database. And as I said, we have an elaborate matching criteria. If there is a match found that satisfies this criteria, we kind of populate this one with already a translation. So the recycling actually contains a very high quality translations that are tested and verified, certified by translators. Anyone from my teammates, if you guys want to add something, just feel free to chime in.
You're good.
Feel free to jump in. So I don't know, I think Tex is following up here. How do you QA localization?
Hi, Tex, I can take it. So we have established process, and this process was established, I will say, long time ago, several years ago, called Localization certification process. So in just a nutshell, this process, as Evan mentioned, all QA part is responsibility of developers and all product development teams. Means these guys has responsibility of creating automated test scripts that are creating screenshots. Based on these screenshots and based on requirements to the screenshots, language managers, in-house linguists are verifying screenshots and providing addressing. If it's linguistic issues, they're addressing this issue. If it's functional issue, by functional I means layout issue, ITNN issue, some issues like this, they're filing bugs to product development teams, and engineers are fixing this issue. Only when all blockers and critical bugs are fixed, this feature or product is ready to go, means certified by localization. Yeah, the process like this.
Okay. Let's see, where were we after Tex? So Rebecca was following up. How long did it take you to build the new tool? How many people worked on it?
Okay. Who wants? I can answer, but guys, feel free to jump.
Is it done?
Actually, yeah, I think I can take this one. It took us several quarters and a team of very talented engineers. I think about 10 dedicated engineers.
I will say.
And well, and several managers. So simply because we have like combined, and it's a combined effort between these two teams that build up the LinkedIn Global Readiness team.
Yes, I can add it here. So yes, definitely we have brilliant engineers, managers, but we will be not very successful without our genius program manager, who was driving and is driving all initiative associated with centralized localization tool.
Okay, so following up on Marina Lee's question about recycling. In the recycling step, Mary MacArthur asks, how do you decide a match on source or on metadata?
Any?
Annie, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I can take this. So the logic based on like many layers. So we have this localization context as the main the context to decide which product it belongs to. And also for the software and non-software, it also has a different logic. For the software, we mainly look at the keys and along with the localization context and which product is coming from. And for the non-software, and we also have the logic based on different content management system. And there's also like a page ID and the more detailed information. So it's combined, not just by source or the metadata. by both of them plus the localization context.
Okay, Alex. Okay, thank you. And now Xiang Zhao, who, by the way, leads the team that will be speaking next month, is asking, is the MT engine trained for LinkedIn products and services? If so, how often do you do MT engine training? Quarterly, monthly, or more frequently?
Oh,
I can answer
wish
this
list.
one.
Sana will take that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
It's actually,
Anna,
we've been using
so
machine translation for a long
that's a
time.
system
We've
that
actually
is
only last
always
year started
in progress,
using machine
like
translation post editing
something
for
that
our
is in
software flows.
our wish list, and I can't think of
we
from the
have
top of
trained
my
the
mind
engine
is,
for our LinkedIn
for
products and
example,
services. The
some of you guys may know
right
that
now is actually
Microsoft
kind of,
provide like various types of
time-based in
translations
terms
and
of
endpoints.
feedback
So
and what we get.
we are
So we don't
fully
have a
hooked
set
up with
cadence yet, but
translate
yes, we
endpoint,
do,
but
train
Microsoft
our
also
engineers
has
for,
an ability
different
to
flows
translate
within LinkedIn.
in a type of a dictionary, like word for word or some idiomatical phrases. So that's something that we recently realized could be a very useful case for the new localization ecosystem, and that is something that we just added into our wish list. Dictionary translation.
Okay. And let's see here. Virginia Suarez asks, what tips do you have for a team that is planning a tool migration? To avoid pain points, I assume.
I can take that.
Yeah, go ahead, Annie.
Yeah, so we are doing this risk integration analysis. So we are making sure we are doing the work in the phases. So phases 1, we are building something until it's fully functional. Then we start merging, to combine stuff together to make sure, we don't have an interrupt this existing system until the new one is working. So we are doing on the phases and also keep adding this functionality as planned.
Great answer, Annie. I can add here. So tip for all companies may be the same. Every single time think from dilemma, build or buy. So if you have enough engineering resources and you like SB, we have lots of brilliant engineers who can do it, do it. So if for nowadays your company, maybe startup or so, you think it's better to buy it, but think about dependencies and third-party dependencies, because as soon as your company will grow, so you will have more dependencies on third-party applications, which may cost you more from different point of view, from engineering resources, from some other resources as well. So it means every single time, think about build or buy.
I can add here as well. On my team, we have a slogan tells us that planning is difficult, coding is easy. I would say planning and especially good design is the key of the great success in the future, especially if you have a team of great engineers, coding will not be a problem. But again, planning, design should be on a high level.
And if you don't plan, you'll have to hire me as your CCO. That's Chief Complaining Officer. Let's see here. We have a follow-up from Rebecca. Is there any part of the tool that allows you to handle localization for audio files?
It's, you can take it, it's one of our, we can say, wish list, but wish is nice to have, not must to have for us. We do not have these needs right now. Actually, we do not have this type of content for localization. So should we do it in the future? Yes. Do we think about it? Yes. Are we going to do it next quarter? Potentially no. So.
Okay. Now Yuka Nakasone is still awake. Very, very impressed. Yes. If you have already said it, and I hope people know she's on from Barcelona. Okay, it's early there. Small e. If you have already said it and I missed it, sorry, but the global readiness team, is that equal to an internal localization team, or do you have other globalization related teams like internationalization, localization, and so on?
Yes, it's two different teams. LinkedIn Global Readiness team, it's mostly engineers and program manager. Our partners, Localization and Global Experience, is a team of well-educated, very successful in-house translators who handle software strings and non-software strings. By non-software means, marketing, legal, GCO content. It's two different teams, but we are partners.
Okay. Let's see. We have a big thank you from Rebecca for the previous answers. Helen Jung asks, was there a feature or product within LinkedIn that was particularly challenging from the localization perspective, e.g. the new support reaction string, open to work banner for the profile picture, and so on? Or was everything easy? Everything was easy, right?
Well, after you have a careful planning, as Lena mentioned, everything should be easy.
I think it's actually a question answerable mostly again by the actual language managers doing the translation, because I assume this is more of a question of linguistic complexity more so than technical.
Well, unless you have a good technical pain point story.
Maybe it's the pain we can mention about our tags, some special formats that's in-house LinkedIn made, and we have problems with these tags every time when we need to work with the third-party company, because we need to remove this part, send to third-party like Microsoft API, and then restore when we get translation from machine translation. I would say this is the most probably challenging work.
Yeah, I will add here that for, let's say for the non-software strings, the challenge that I can think of and share is that we have to, as I explained in the presentation, we have to kind of satisfy all the client requests. There are various formats and there are requirements in order to abstract that logic and provide like a centralized API endpoint for all the clients in order to handle and provide like a agnosticism in the underlying layers that build up the centralized localization tool in order to easy maintain in the future.
Okay. So Marina asks, do you review / clean up the linguistic assets, the TM and TB?
I can answer that. Our team does not in any other capacity than making sure that the segmentation is logical and accurate from a linguistic point of view. But we do have, like we said, our partners in our global experience localization team that do look at these. So any workflow that goes through post-editing or human translation flow would be obviously looked at and post-edited by those guys. And as far as cleaning up the TM and the term database, that's also something that they do. We do partner with them though, in terms of on the term database, for example, we partner with them to make sure that we know what's relevant for machine translation and what's useful for machine translation. Whereas a lot of a term database might be for human reference. And so we partner very closely with that team.
Okay. And harking back to Virginia's question, she sent you a big thank you. Now we've got a question from Marcel Bregman, who asks, since you are breaking up assets into individual strings, and there he is too, you're breaking up assets into individual strings that take different pathways. What kind of context is provided for the translators when they eventually receive new content to be translated? How do you deal with the fragmentation, both for human translation and post-editing? What kind of metadata goes into the XLFF that is sent out?
I can take that. So since we are doing segmentation and for the non-software part only, and we don't do the segmentation for the software stream, but the main logic is the same. So first we recycle with the existing content database. And after that, we do the machine translation. So the metadata sending along in the XLFF file will include, where this is coming from, which will be the localization context, and also what's the matching type. Is it like fuzzy match, ice match, or 100%? All those information included, and also along with the matching score if it's a fuzzy match, or if it's coming from the machine translation. So all those data we include in the file sending to the TMS. Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Give us a thumbs up, Marcel. Okay, so I guess that was a good one. Okay, he's got, well, you're muted, so you have to type. But meanwhile, I'll mention that Yuka followed up on your answer to her question and said it should be a complicated and large set of teams. Impressive. I'm impressed she's awake. I think it was the switch from the black to pink headphones that did it. That's what keeps you going. Okay, so let's see. Marcel was referring more to the context within TE asset, i.e. neighboring strings, etc. Or maybe a screenshot of how the English string is used.
Oh, the screenshot.
Screenshot of an XLFF file, correct?
No.
No?
It's not about screenshots. It's about what kind of metadata we are adding for language managers or LSPs to provide better quality of translation. So we actually do not request from product development team to add screenshots as metadata, but they can add comments. It's optional. So we encourage product development team to add comments for translation to increase productivity and efficiency of our language managers and LSPs, but we are not forcing it. So is it good or not? I don't know, but it's how we deal with it right now.
Okay, well, let's see, where were we? I'm going to skip text for a minute because Marcel had another question, which is, does the software optimization or any other part of the CLT deal with CLDR plurals, enabling, for instance, for Russian, where you would need 4 different plural forms compared to the 2 in the English source?
I assume we have Georg here.
Well, I can take that one. So we do have, as was mentioned before, we use placeholders in strings where you basically want to output some value. We also have placeholders that deals with more of a logic type approach, where you can say, I want to take an argument that is a number, and then based on the value, I assign a category to that. So if you're familiar with CLDR, you know that for the plural handling, they have these different category names, 0, 1, 2, few, many other. And those are basically assigned at runtime when you actually know the actual number that goes with it. Then can you figure out for a given language, what's the category that belongs to that number. So we have placeholders that allow us to basically specify the different values for those different categories. And it looks almost like a map, if you will, where you say, if the number that I have at one time is mapped to the category 0, then output value 1. If it's 1, then output value 2. If it's 2, and so on. So in essence, it's basically like a lookup map, if you will. And that construct basically allows us to make that differentiation between the different plural cases. So I don't know if that was clear enough or if that made sense.
Okay, Marcel. Yes? Okay. So. Well, just keep typing. I'm going to go to text now. This is like a business decision question. Tex asks, what was your build versus buy decision like? Why build this system versus using an LSP that offers MT and TM management?
I can take it, and after that, Danny or Ivan, please add more. So we had experience, as Ivan mentioned in the beginning of presentation, we had experience working with third-party application. We use this instant on LinkedIn site, actually. And having several serious issues with third-party application, it was the last call for our decision because we started to think about our own system a long time ago. But as always, not enough resources, some other priorities necessary to fix here and there. So we did not start building a big system, even planning a big system in 2018 even. So, but several severe issues just push us to the decisions that it's more safe for us to have stable in-house system that can handle different volumes, that can handle different type of content and do not have any dependencies. On MT side, we are lucky to be part of a big Microsoft family. So it means we are utilizing Microsoft machine translation, which is, we are absolutely satisfied with quality for now. Project management on MT side, etc. So it's very, I will say, difficult story. And when we discuss it and when we really decided not to buy build, it was not a decision, one-day decision. We did really serious analysis, what will cost us to build it, what kind of resources we will need, what kind of resources we will not spend if we will continue to go with LSP, with different type of LSPs. By comparing all these decisions, or all these options, sorry, we made decisions that it will be really good for LinkedIn ecosystem to build own localization ecosystem, and the main piece is centralized localization tool. Ivan, Amy, feel free to add.
I can, okay.
Yes, I can just add quickly that this is a tool, simply, that as the name is, centralized localization tool. It's not a full-blown or like a full-scale TMS. As already mentioned, we are using TMS for specific needs, like human translation, for example. So it's only has like it's not like a TM, but we want to think about this as a recycling database where we add like value added examples that have been kind of gathered through the years, from since day one when localization was established at LinkedIn. So we really want to have this one and prefer to run them in-house, simply because it depends on the vendor. Some TMS providing vendors will allow you to run an in-house instance, whereas others will say, no, you're not, so everything should be on our own machines. So that's a business and we think strategic decision that we've taken to try to keep as much as possible in-house. Tatiana already answered the question about the aspect about the machine translation. So we are actually using a lot of the tiers and the services that we use for feed translation, and we reach you guys, I believe everyone has seen at least a couple of times the seed translation on the LinkedIn feed. We evaluated quite a few industry standard leaders, and Microsoft, apart from the fact that we are partners with them, stood up with a very good quality and outstanding support.
And if you don't mind, Joe, I'd like to just follow up on the QA question. It's seems common to me what many companies that set up automation kind of set up the automation in isolation from the rest of their processes. So I heard your response about QA, but what I'm looking for is when you discover problems with translations, how the feedback gets back into your automated system. So, and it sounds like you work with updating your automation more on a periodic basis for, updating the MT and updating the TM, as opposed to, well, for particular translations, we're finding bugs. We have to go back and adjust context or make some other changes. And so I was looking for some kind of feedback process that you incorporate into this cycle of running the translations. So there's nothing like that, or is there?
So feedback, you mean from, let's say, quality of translations and
yeah, when you find, after you do your translations, you go into QA, you find localization quality problems, mistranslations, translations from old versions of LinkedIn products that should no longer be in there, translations out of context, or things that are just wrong for one reason or another. How do you, there should be a way to update your system with some speed rather than waiting for periodic updates.
So, do you want to take this one?
I can answer that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this work would be done again by our partners. The actual, if they have a bug or something, they find an old translation, just like you mentioned, they can go in and on demand send these through the system and update them just like they would have as if they were brand new strings. So they can send them through the system and update them. And as it goes through the CLT, our own database will be updated as well. So certainly there's absolutely a process for that, and has been.
And if the translation came from your machine translation?
Same. I mean, it doesn't matter. If it came through, you would update it, and any machine translation that is post-edited is saved, and next time would be recycled as the new and improved version.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so Rebecca was in there trying to help follow up on Marcel's question. It seems to me it may be that the linguistic context that the translators get may be something for the global experience team to have built, right? I mean, I don't know if you have further information on that for us.
Yeah, we don't currently attach screenshots or anything like that along with the translations, though that's certainly something that we're open to in the future.
So the only thing I would add here is that we do in most cases, I believe, allow an engineer to provide extra context of what a string, in which context the string is used for. Say you have a string that doesn't give away exactly what's being displayed. Say it has a placeholder in it, and you don't know what that placeholder is. You could add a sort of documentation to the string to say, here I'm outputting a company name, for example, and thereby sort of provide the context to the linguist.
Okay, we only have one or two more at the most. Let's see. Catherine Plu-Smith says, how do you handle marketing content, email marketing, i.e. if you use Marketo or a similar tool, specifically to accommodate the translation of highly customized email content with snippets, images, etc. Can you leverage MT at all for marketing emails?
Lana?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that. So I'm a huge fan of machine translation. I am also a localization specialist and a translator myself. This is not where machine translation shines, and we are fully aware of that, which is why we still are very happy to have our partners that can transcreate content in a way that machine translation is not. You certainly can leverage MT for suggested translations, but no, we're fully aware that this requires a person and a little bit of a personal touch, for sure.
Okay, good. Good one. Thanks, Catherine. Let's see. Jacko says, is it easy to add a support for a new resource file format?
Yuck.
That's the answer, yes?
I can take that. So our
Your-
system is designed to be flexible for any kind of format. Although, for each format, we need to add different parser for that. Yeah, so it is easy. Just need to add the parser for that.
Yeah, there's usually a little bit more involved than just, that one step. That applies to sort of like the localization pipeline. But we do have also mechanisms in place that prevent engineers from committing resource files, for example, that have invalid syntax in it. Since we use placeholders, you could have a mistake in the string that would break the syntax itself. So there are several places where we sort of have to make sure that we validate what you're passing, what you're trying to commit to the code base, to make sure it's valid and it doesn't, it doesn't break the system. But yeah, in general, adding a new resource file type is definitely possible. But so far, over the course of the last 10 years, we've kind of narrowed down on a very well-defined set of file types.
Yeah, question is sort of a software versus non-software. So
Right.
We have our ITN folks like Georg, very insightful for the software pipeline, where that certainly there are more restrictions to think about than localization. And for non-software, we have the CLT is very flexible.
Good. Okay. Well, let's see. Oh, we did have one question. I missed Yasmin's question when I was jumping around in there. Let's see, where is it? Can you let us know which TMS you are using? How easy or difficult was it to build a connector with your system? And thanks to Sergio for noticing that I missed that question.
So maybe I will start and Tani, you can take it. So if you're asking us about the current TMS, so the current TMS is World Server. If you're asking us about TMS that we are going to use when we will finalize our centralized localization tool, which is work in progress. So maybe not saying names, the question is how difficult it is to build connector. Well, it's doable. It's not easy. I will say it's between easy and difficult, something like this, but then you can add more insights here.
And also jump in later. Annie, go ahead.
Yeah, it also depends on the TMS, what API they are offering. So based on different TMS, and yeah, it can be easy or difficult. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you all for sharing. This has been very interesting, and we hope you finish the tool someday. No, these things are never finished. We understand. So thank you. This has been very interesting, and there are still 38 people in there, and they're all applauding right now. See, I see applause icons even. There we go. Thank you.